Well, hello everyone, Dr. David Perlmutter here, and if you've been following our messaging over the past few years, I think you'll perceive that there has been a gravitation towards more of a plant-based diet. Now, originally with Grain Brain, there was this idea that we were really advocating eating a lot of meat and a lot of animal-based products. The truth is that was never what our messaging was. But nonetheless, I think it's clear that we're moving towards a much more plant-based diet with time, and with really good reason. We recognize benefits of more of a plant-based diet, and today we actually have the opportunity to speak with Suzy Cameron. Let me tell you about her. She is a noted environmental advocate and former actress and model. She's the mother of 5 children and now a grandmother of 1. She founded a school that we are going to talk about today called the MUSE School. She'll tell us all about that, along with her sister. And she has actually founded a number of plant-based focused organizations, including their Cameron Family Farms that she founded together with her husband, who is film director James Cameron. You may know him from some films like Avatar and Titanic. They founded the Plant Power Task Force, Verdient, and Red Carpet Green Dress. And she's the author of a very interesting book. The book is called OMD. It stands for One Meal a Day. She is making a case for us to choose one meal a day to be entirely plant-based. And with good reason, and she explains the reasoning behind that, not just for our own personal health, but indeed for the health of the environment, the health of the planet as well. She lets us understand the impact that the production of animal-based foods is having on the environment, and it's a really powerful elucidation of really what's going on. So I'm really encouraging you to look at her new book, which is OMD. In our new book, which is Brainwash, we actually are advocates of one meal a day at least, of being entirely plant-based. And we are doing that and trending more and more towards a plant-based diet, and I believe with good reason. So let's jump into our exciting interview today with Suzy Cameron. Well, hello, Suzy. Welcome to our program.
Hi, it's really nice to be here. Thank you for having me on.
Our viewers need to know that we've already covered a lot of the material, but we'll go through it again. I was telling you that with our new book, which may be surprising to many of our readers, what with Grain Brain and all, we are advocating at least one meal a day being plant-based. And the truth be known, that information came from you. It came from your book, OMD, One Meal a Day, which was really very inspiring. I will admit to you that over the years, I dug my heels in on the environmental aspects of vegetarianism, etc., saying, well, there's not a lot of data, etc. And you made it very clear that it's time to see things through a different perspective, which is certainly another of our goals of Brainwash. So let's get started by asking you how this all came about in your life. What was the tipping point for you?
Well, first of all, I couldn't be more thrilled that that I, had a little bit to do with the fact that you're now, asking for people to switch one of their meals a day to a plant-based meal, because it's really empowering to the individual, and being able to know that you can make a difference. And just right off the bat, and everybody that's watching or listening, is that one person changing one of their meals a day to a plant-based meal for 1 year saves 200,000 gallons of water, and the carbon equivalent of driving from Los Angeles to New York. Wow. Along with all the other benefits of, health and the animals and your sex life and so many different things.
Well, let's talk about health right off the bat. I mean, these days there's so many popular diets, paleo, keto, and there's, a resurgence of the carnivorous diet we're seeing. I don't know how that's going to work out, but let's talk about what you've discovered in terms of health benefits of a plant-based diet.
Well, I probably should, even go into the, where it all started, because it all started for me definitely with health. Both Jim and I, Jim is my husband, we both have heart disease and cancer and diabetes on both sides of the family. And, for the most part, when you go to the doctor and they ask you what your family history is, and if you tick any of those boxes, chances are they'll say, well, you're probably going to end up with those as well.
Do they ever ask you what you're eating?
No,
Who knew?
never, never, ever, ever.
Do you have pets? Do you have a dog?
We have quite a few dogs, actually.
And when you take them to the vet, do they ask you what you're feeding your pet, your dog?
Sometimes they do.
Of course they do. But when you go to the doctor, they don't, it's not a question. But anyhow, so you've got family risk for all kinds of things that you'd like to avoid. So what did you?
So, Jim's side, there's a lot of pretty drastic heart disease, and the doctors were telling him because of that he needed to start taking some, prescriptive drugs prophylactically. There wasn't anything off the charts or anything like that, and I just kept saying, no, you can't. Let's look at the fine print. Let's look at all of the side effects. And he basically just said, look, babe, you get older, you typically you end up on meds, and then you feel like crud, and then you die. And I just kept saying, no, I don't believe that. There has to be another way. And I felt deep down inside it had to do with food, but I had no idea what it was. We thought we were eating the best that we could possibly eat. So we were having free range chicken, grass-fed beef, all of our dairy was organic. We had free range eggs. I mean, everything that you would think of that would be perfect and healthy, and that's what I thought. And then I watched Forks Over Knives, and I don't know if you've seen that, but a friend of mine gave it to me, and I just plopped it in the DVD player one day when I was jumping on the treadmill, and I literally had to get off after 10 minutes, and I actually felt really angry because I felt like I had been advertised to my whole life. I grew up in Oklahoma. Mm-hmm. We have a family farm. We grew cows, we grew pigs, and we ate them. And my whole life, my mom she has really severe osteoporosis, but she will still continue to say, and when we were little, it's like, you guys need to drink your milk. You need to have strong bones. You need to grow big and strong.
Right.
And,
what a narrative that was perpetrated about calcium in milk leading to stronger bones, when in reality, there is likely a net loss in milk drinkers of calcification of bone due to the protein content. So we all went through that narrative, that's for sure.
Yeah, exactly. And I send her articles, I send her research papers, I underline the bits in my book, but there's only so much you can do. Anyway, so after watching Forks Over Knives, and it just hit me, my heart was pounding, and I went to find Jim right after I finished it, and I basically just said, look, I need an hour and a half of your time tomorrow. And he said, oh, okay, well, where are we going to go? And I said, we're not going to go anywhere. We're going to watch a movie. And he said, oh, cool. Well, what movie are we going to watch? And I said, I'm not going to tell you what it is, but I just want to watch it, and then we'll talk about it. Well, we sat down in our TV room, we watched it, and by the time we finished it and got to the kitchen, he said we shouldn't have any more animal products in the house at all. So 24 hours later, our kitchen was cleaned out, and we even had goats up at our ranch. So we had our own goat yogurt and goat cheese and goat milk. We stopped the production of that within 48 hours. And we kept the goats around for fire abatement, and because they're really cute. But that's just that was us. That's how we roll. It's been 7.5 years now. That was in 2012. We have since found out that not everybody rolls that way. And very often people do need to just ease into the idea of change in whatever the change might be, whether it's food but food is a very sensitive subject. So, trying to tell people to go cold turkey 550% is usually not the best avenue. The piece that happened after that was the moment. I mean, so that was a big aha moment for both of us, for
And
sure.
again, what year was that?
That was May 7th, 2012, when we watched it together. And it was maybe about a month later, he started handing me books about animal agriculture and the environment. And there were maybe only 2 or 3 out at the time, but he had known about it. He knew that there was a connection between animal agriculture and the environment, but he thought we needed to be eating meat to be strong, and to be drinking milk and dairy to have strong bones. So he was just like, well, sorry for you, environment, because we need it. But after watching Forks Over Knives, he realized, not only do we not need it, but it's actually killing us and killing the planet. So he started really educating me. And, there was if you know Jim, I mean, his movies that he makes are really, he's kind of a doomsday kind of guy. He's, Terminator and Avatar and Titanic and The Abyss and Aliens. I mean, it's really like death and destruction and everybody's going to die and it's the end of the world.
Luckily, it's his fantasy world, not reality, God willing.
Yeah, exactly. But when we met 23 years ago, I said something, we were on a walk and I said something about, well, I really hope that that's going to happen. And he said, oh, I hate that word.
Hope is not a strategy.
Hope is not a strategy. So he says this a lot.
He said that on a Tim Ferriss interview that I heard when I was running one day.
There you go. Yeah, hope is not a strategy. And he's got a T-shirt that says hope is not a strategy, and he wears it regularly. About a month after we went plant-based, though, we were walking on the beach. And he stopped and he turned to me and he said, for the first time in my life, babe, I have hope. Needless to say, I almost fell into the surf because I had never heard him use that word before, except for hope is not a strategy. And he said, the more people we can inspire to go plant-based, the more we can move the needle on climate change. And it was in that moment that my whole purpose in life shifted to, and I knew I wanted to write a book, and I knew I wanted to educate people and create content, movies and websites and write various books for children, for grown-ups, for teenagers, whoever it was, to educate them and inspire them to understand why eating plant-based can be so beneficial, not only for you, but also for the environment.
It's the word's getting out, and you're doing a heck of a job. I'd like to pick up the story with the creation of the MUSE School.
MUSE School. It's we started it 14 years ago, so we're in our 14th year, and it's a academic school to begin with, but it's also an environmental school. And we have programs for self-efficacy, we have communication programs, and one of our big pillars that we have, which actually talks directly to your new book, is being open, resourceful, and persistent. So all of the children, and we start at 2 years old and go all the way through 18. So we go, through high school, and we've graduated 4 classes now.
Wow.
But the children, it really is all about, we like to say, not only just thinking outside the box, but we like to say, what box? Where's the box? Because these kids really, they're just champions at critical thinking, which is what which is what the future is going to need ultimately, because we don't know what kind of jobs that, these children are. We don't even know what kind of jobs are going to exist in the future. So they're really learning how to be resourceful. It's a passion and interest based learning school. So every single child, it doesn't matter if they're 2 or if they're 18, has their own passion. So this passion might be medicine, it might be food, it might be cosmetics, it might be aerospace, it might be marine biology, it might be big cats in Africa. And then what we do is we connect them with mentors. And with the technology like you and I are using right now, we're able to, like we had a child that was really interested in African cats, big cats. And so we were able to connect them with a wildlife reserve in Africa via Skype and Zoom. But what we do with the passions, and then we incorporate the academics that they're learning into the passions. And so the children end up working at 2, 3, 4 in grade levels ahead of the state and national standards because they're so fired up about what they're doing.
Let me offer you, if you have any students that are interested, I don't know, this is very likely, in brain science or the effects of environmental choices on how the brain works, I would be delighted to mentor a child in that regard.
Oh, sweet. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for that.
Sure.
Yeah, we've got kids are into all kinds of different things. It's really wild.
Now, the food served at the school?
Yeah, so when we first started, we were feeding everyone at school the same way I was feeding my family, thinking it was absolutely, the best choices. So again, the grass-fed beef and free-range chicken and cage-free eggs and all the organic dairy. And we do have a very, very robust seed-to-table program. So the children, we're growing a lot of vegetables. And about, right after we went plant-based, so I founded the school with my sister, Rebecca Amos. And she and her husband went cold turkey, or Rip Esselstyn likes to say cold kale, right along with us. And there was one day where we looked at each other and we said, we cannot continue to call ourselves an environmental school and still be serving animal products. So we took 18 months to educate our teachers, our families, our children, and we had speakers come in every month. We had doctors, we had climate scientists, we had authors and chefs and athletes. Neil Barnard came in for one of the speeches, and what they did was they spent the whole day with the children, going from classroom to classroom, speaking to them in developmentally appropriate ways about being plant-based. And then in the evening, we invited all of the grown-ups to come to gather together. We gave them a glass of wine and some nice plant-based food to learn about that. So this was happening every month. We had food committees with the families, food committees with the teachers, food committees with the children, to really talk about how to transition away from animal products. And in fall of 15, we announced that we were the first plant-based school in the nation, and it was full-on mutiny. We lost 50% of our families, just like that. Now, the good news is we quickly regained our enrollment. We've since surpassed it. We have families that move from around the United States just to come to the school. We've had a couple of families from Europe move to the area because it's plant-based and it's focused on the environment. But because of this situation that happened, our head of school, Jeff King, one day got very frustrated with the families, and he said, "People, you can feed them what you want in the morning and feed them what you want at nighttime. It's one meal a day. It's OMD." So that's where OMD came from.
Wow.
And I had started working on the book and kind of had ideas about what direction I wanted to go in. I definitely wanted to talk a lot about the environment and health. but the OMD, the idea of OMD completely opened the door in a different way. Jim and I, after we went plant-based, we were so up on our soapbox telling everybody, that they just needed to switch overnight, and they would see us coming and they would turn around and walk away. We would have, holiday dinners, and our family members wouldn't show up, or they would show up 2 hours late, having gone to eat turkey somewhere else. One year, and since we're around the holidays, one year, Jim actually told his family, he said, no, 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 we're having turkey. We're definitely having turkey this year. So everybody showed up on time and hungry. And we had a black and a white, gorgeous live turkeys in our living room. Anyway, I thought that was.
I've not met your husband, but he sounds like my kind of guy. Sounds like a character.
He is. He's definitely a groovy guy. But that's, OMD was born at MUSE, and now, 6 years later, since we've been 100% plant-based, the families love it. The children love it. They know exactly why we're doing it. They even have kind of internal competitions of how much water they're saving, how much carbon that they're saving. And we actually increased our raised beds at school. We have about 150 raised beds. So the children grow anywhere from 70 to 80% of the produce that they eat every single day. So they plant it, grow it, harvest it. They learn how to prepare it. But they really understand all of the reasons why it's beneficial to be plant-based. And then we start and then they ripple out. And then all of a sudden we've got mommies and daddies and aunties and uncles and grandmas and grandpas calling us up saying, we need recipes.
Oh, wow.
Or how do I build a garden? How do I do composting? So they are the best little viri vectors that you can ever imagine, because, there was one little, two little stories. They're actually in my book. But one of them, if you have a toddler and you're in a grocery store, inevitably at some point you're going to have a complete meltdown, usually over like the Fruit Loops or the Choco whatever it is, Count Chocula. But this little boy started stomping his feet and screaming at the top of his lungs, saying, "But you promised me tofu!" So
who knew?
Yeah, and then there was another little a little girl that was around the same age, and for dinner time, this little child said, "I don't want to have anything for dinner except radishes."
Wow, there you
Because
go.
they had been growing radishes at school. And, these are the kinds of stories that we hear all the time.
Many years ago, I decided, we live in a regular neighborhood in Naples, Florida, and I decided I was going to plow the front yard. I mean, it's a very manicured neighborhood, so I decided I was going to plow the front yard, and we brought in a dump truck of organic black soil, and we planted the front yard, which nobody does. I mean, everybody's yards are manicured and sprayed with who knows what. And people would walk down the street and had never seen a broccoli growing before. They didn't, it was mind boggling that they'd never actually seen that. I do miss that. And I think we're going to restructure our lives in the future in such a way so we can reconnect to that, the pleasure of growing our food. What are the biggest pushbacks you get as an advocate of a plant-based diet? Where do people tend to want to hold your feet to the fire?
Well, before OMD was born, people just thought we were crazy. Those like crazy people that live out in Los Angeles. And I mean, certainly our family thought so. And there was a lot of teasing happening, and you're not getting enough protein, and you're going to get sick.
How do you answer that complaint about not having enough protein?
Well, I can go into a whole diatribe about protein because I actually, it drives me crazy because I know that it's become so, people are obsessed. They're obsessed with how much protein that they're getting. And, the doctors tell us that we're supposed to get a certain amount. But in the end, I actually think that level sometimes is too high as well. But Americans get 3 to 4 times as much protein as they need, and mostly animal protein. It's difficult to get too much protein on a plant-based diet. Um, I think when you're eating a balanced plant-based diet, you're getting just the right amount that you actually do need. I don't count grams. I work out like crazy, usually twice a day. For an hour and a half in the morning, and then I usually take a good brisk walk in the evenings. And I have an unbelievable amount of energy. Jim and I have not been sick in 7 years. No
Wow.
colds, no flus, no tummy bugs, no nothing.
Let me just a message to our viewers real quick that this idea of protein is something that I explored in an interview with James Clement, who wrote this book called The Switch. And I would ask you to take a look at that video because we talk about some of the biochemistry that relates to things like what are called pathways, IGF-1 pathway and the mTOR pathway, and how excessive activation of these pathways brought on by having too much protein in your diet may actually compromise your body's ability to purge itself of defective parts of the cell. So that is kind of an interesting segue to what you're talking about. And I would agree with you that by and large, Americans are getting way too much protein. For years it was thought, well, that means muscle, that means keeping yourself from decaying. But as you brought out in your recent movie Game Changers, I mean, you had Arnold Schwarzenegger, as a matter of fact, talking about building muscle on a plant-based diet. So you featured a clip of me saying butter is back, I think from being on the Dr. Oz show. Hey, you know what? Things change moving forward. So let's segue, if we can, to a very important topic that is being buried under the carpet these days. We're seeing this incredible polarization of the environmental ideas of what we can do to virtually save ourselves moving forward versus burying our head in the sand and continuing on our ways. What can we say about the environmental impact of people adopting a 1 meal a day program, or maybe take it even further, becoming full-on vegetarian?
Well, there are so many benefits to the environment. Um, and, this is the basis of OMD, that, and I said it at the beginning. So one person changing one of their meals a day to a plant-based meal for 1 year saves 200,000 gallons of water and the carbon equivalent of driving from Los Angeles to New York. So if you're doing it 3 times a day, you just do the math. It's 600,000 gallons of water and the carbon equivalent of driving from Los Angeles to New York 3 times. So, when you're talking about people burying their head in the sand, I used to be one of those people because, I was in environmental circles for decades and learning all about all of the environmental issues out there and everything from dead zones to biodiversity loss and deforestation, ocean acidification, melting glaciers, climate change. I mean, everything that you can possibly imagine. No one ever said a word about animal agriculture. And I would go to these meetings and I would drive home and I would literally have to sit in my garage for about 10 to 15 minutes just to decompress from all of the information that I knew. And, before I could come into the house with my children, to be back to the cheerleader mom, because they weren't giving us any solutions. They were just, it's kind of when you watch Inconvenient Truth, it's the most depressing thing ever. And the solutions were like, yeah, you can change your light bulbs and get solar and maybe drive an environmentally friendly car, a hybrid or an electric car. But how many people can do that? Number one. But I just used to wake up with a pit in my stomach every day, wondering, like, what else can I do? Now I realize that I'm in a unique position, and I can start environmental schools. I can start eco dress design contests. I can start, environmental NGOs. I realize that, but I also knew it wasn't scratching the surface at all. And when I found out about, just how much you can make a difference by what you're putting on your plate, it was all of a sudden there was hope. I did have hope because it's really empowering to the individual. I think people get paralyzed. They don't know what to do. They don't know what they can do. Some of them just don't even believe in it, as we know. And I have family members in Oklahoma that are like that. But those people might go plant-based for their health, which
But
is
OMD is very inclusive, though, isn't it? I mean, you throw the very big net with OMD. I mean, that's why we included it in our book.
yeah,
That for
it
the
is.
kids, they're having their plant-based lunch at school, and they can eat what they want for breakfast and dinner.
That's
But
right.
just the impact of choosing one meal a day being entirely plant-based has huge ramifications.
It does. So if you think about every time you put food on your plate, you're either hurting your health and the environment or you're helping your health and the environment. So it is incredibly empowering for the individual to be able to know that, there is something you can do for it. And I always tell people, I really personally, I mean, my message is about the environment. I have a brand new grandbaby, my first, and I think about what kind of a world he's going to grow up in. I think about all of the children at MUSE. Everywhere I go, I just think of children, and so my mission in life and goal is to do everything that I can to make the world a better place for our children to grow up in. And I really tell people, I don't care why you go plant-based. I don't care if you're doing it for your health or for the animals or for the environment or to, for your waistline or for your sex life. I really don't care because everything benefits. It's like this silver bullet. Everybody benefits from it.
What about cost? Some people might argue and say what you're proposing is far more expensive.
Well, if you think about the cost, the true cost of a burger, or a piece of steak, you're talking about the environmental cost, you're talking about the health cost, you're talking about all the subsidies that take place. People ask why, some people ask why the Amazon was burning. Well, the Amazon was burning to clear land to graze animals or to grow soy and corn to feed the animals. And also too, if you think, and there are tons of books on the market actually right now about being able to make plant-based food for pennies, basically. And it's become this thing of that it's really, really expensive. But if you bought a 5-pound bag of beans or lentils and a 5-pound bag of rice or quinoa or, some kind of grain, the amount of things that you can make with that is unbelievable. But you can buy those things for, a couple of bucks, basically. So there are all kinds of different options with that. But I think the mentality comes a lot. It's like people that walk into McDonald's, for instance, and I've actually had people say this to me. They say, look, I walk into McDonald's, for me to eat vegan at McDonald's, then, a salad costs $8 and a burger costs $1. Well, number one, don't go to McDonald's. But number two, it's that burger in all reality, cost, and a salad shouldn't cost $8, frankly, but if you're just looking at that model, that burger costs a lot more money than that $8 salad because of what it's doing to your health and to the environment and the animals.
Your husband, on his as he films movies, on the set, they're providing all plant-based foods for all the crew.
Yes, so he basically stole the idea from me. He it is the Avatar was the first plant-based catered set in the world.
Well,
And
that's interesting because of the relationship that they had with the trees. That's the interconnectedness. So that
yeah,
works.
exactly.
Is that a backstory or no?
About the trees and no, because he made the first one way before we were plant-based.
Wasn't that in 2009?
Yes, but we went plant-based in 2012.
Gotcha.
Yeah. But after we did, started the snack and lunch program at MUSE, he looked at that and he said, maybe I should do that, on the set of Avatar. And the way he sold it to everyone was, it's one meal a day. It's just one meal a day. And they did all the environmental calculations. They started off, I think they served about 100 plates a day for quite a while. And then everybody started getting really interested in it. He showed game changers to his whole crew. And that next day, they were serving 220 plates.
Wow.
Game changers alone, I mean, it has been a game changer. It's the #1 watched documentary of all time on iTunes. And it's going in that direction on Netflix. We just got word of that last night, actually.
Nice.
But people are seeing it, and they are going cold turkey. It's crazy.
Well, I want to commend you, and again, I want to thank you. We have an outreach based upon information that we get, and change our messaging with time as we learn. And you've been very instrumental in those changes that are happening from our end. So I want to thank you for that. And again, the book OMD will certainly have a graphic up for that, available everywhere. I hardly ever buy books because I get 4 or 5 books every week to review and to comment on, and most of them are manuscripts. But so I don't know when I bought a book last. I actually bought your book, having read about it. So I think that might be the last book I bought. I mean, all these books are basically sent to me. So I really thought I needed to read it, and I'm very, very glad that I did. So thanks for spending time with us today.
Yeah, I'm glad you read it too. And it's really nice to meet you.
Great. Hope to see you soon.
Okay.
Okay. Bye for now, Suzy.
Okay. Bye.
Well, thanks, Suzy, again for that terrific interview. And what a great book OMD is. As I mentioned in the introduction, it was so influential for us in writing Brainwash. It really is important to embrace the idea that the more we go plant-based, the better off it is going to be, certainly environmentally and certainly for our own health as well. Well, I think many of you may be surprised by the program today. That's a good thing. Change is always good, whether it has a good outcome or not. And I think in this case, it's going to have a really good outcome. So thanks for listening. I'm Dr. David Perlmutter. Bye for now.